Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. I am thrilled to have Ashley Etienne, who is a marvel in the communications biz. She has worked for everyone and anyone. And most importantly, she's worked not once, but twice for Nancy Pelosi. And in light of her announced retirement, which is almost hard to
I
believe,
know.
Ashley was good enough to join us. It's so nice to see you, Ashley. Thank you.
You, Jen. Thanks for having me. And to your point, it's a sad day. It's definitely the end of an era, but I felt very blessed to have been in those rooms with Speaker Pelosi and to learn from her and watch her work. And it's lessons that I'll take with me and that I think are transferable to every aspect of my life. So I'm so
Absolutely.
excited to talk about it. Yeah.
Let's talk about the first time you joined her. When was that, and how did you wind up in that position?
Yeah, I was running communications for the oversight committee. So we had just done Benghazi, Fast and Furious, all those big investigations. And I was unsure of what I was going to do, but I felt like my time had run out with Mr. Cummings and I'd done everything I wanted to do there. I met with Pelosi's team and they were like, we've been watching you. What do you think about working for Nancy? And I was like, working for Nancy? I want to be Nancy Pelosi. I don't just want to work for her. I want to embody everything that she actually is: steely, fearless, deeply committed to the country and the Constitution, a beautiful, stylish, doting wife and grandmother. I wanted to be all of those things. So I started to work for her. I think it may have been 2014. I started working for her and I did a couple of years there and then got called by the Obama White House to go work there.
So, what was she like as a boss?
Uh, this is the question I get asked most often is what was it like working for Nancy Pelosi? And I usually just refer to one word, and that's intense. She is intense. If she were to call me right now, I think I'd become overwhelmed and overcome with anxiety. I mean, and I would be questioning what I don't know because somehow she's got like a sixth sense to figure out what you don't know, But it was intense, but it was beyond that. For me, it was I do believe Nancy Pelosi is an object lesson, not just in power and leadership, but she taught me, all of those things about how to build it, how to wield it, when to spend it, how, in terms of leadership, the clarity of purpose, the conviction, the deep sense of responsibility to the country. I got all of that. But I also got aspects that I think most women don't get unless you work for a powerful woman. And that is how to be a woman in power. And
Wow.
those were sort of the intangible things that I learned from her. Like, the fact that you can be all of these things, that all the woman that I just described earlier, and not one of these women contradict or compromise the other. You can be a 360 woman and put your Manolo and Putin's ASS, you know what I mean, and still dote on your husband and your grandchildren. So she taught me really all of that. I mean, I haven't really completely found the words to describe everything that I've learned from her, but I can tell you I am more aware of my own power, as she would say. I
Wow.
remember in the middle of impeachment, I put my right after the Mueller investigation, you were there through it all, and it failed. It sort of just died, a slow death terribly. And I just thought, I came back to work for the speaker for this reason, to run the opposition to Donald Trump. And here we are. I missed the moment. We missed our opportunity. And that's kind of how I felt. I remember putting my head on Dick Meltzer's desk, who was our policy director, and I started crying. And I told him, I said, this man's Teflon, nothing sticking on him. And he said to me at the time, you're trying to do something no one's done. You're trying to take down the emperor. Why did you ever think it was going to be easy? Then Pelosi comes over in that moment and says to me, you've got to understand and know your own power. I brought you back here from the White House for a reason. If you don't know what it is, and if you don't know what your power is, you're of no use to us or the country. So you've got to
Wow.
figure it out. And so, and here I am thinking, well, it's easy for Pelosi to say that. I mean, she knows hers. She's steeped in it. She grew up in it, right? With an understanding of it. Here I am, this young Black girl that shouldn't even be in these rooms. What is my power? And so it took me on this journey to really explore that question. But much of what I've learned about my own power is by virtue of watching her.
Absolutely. She was the hardest worker I have ever seen in Congress, and she seemed to have endless energy and focus.
Totally.
Talk to us a little bit about that. Was that just something she came to office with that kind of steel in the spine and energy? Was that from raising five kids? Was that the model that her parents set for her? Where did that work ethic come from, do you think?
So what she would say is really a couple of factors. It's one, having five children in 6 years, right?
Yes,
That'll teach you a lot of lessons about momentum and stamina and all of those different things. And then the other, she always attributed to being Italian. She's like, it's my Italian heritage, and the third, I think she would always say, is dark chocolate. The dark chocolate gives her energy. And so, and that
yes,
is so true. There were so many meetings I remember being in with her. And if we saw that she started to, like, the energy level goes down, gets a little hangry, we'd bring in a chocolate ice cream bar, and all of a sudden she's back at it again. But no,
it's
you're absolutely right. I mean, she was the hardest working person that I've known in the business. I mean, I would be with her, briefing her 7 o'clock in the morning as she's getting her hair blown out, of the top news of the day. And then that wasn't enough for her. She'd call another staffer to brief her even more on the news. So she just had really this, to your point, this boundless energy. But more than anything else, she never wasted a minute.
yeah,
I mean, she
yeah,
despised, downtime, as she would say. I mean, I remember
yes,
once, I mean, just to punctuate the point, we were waiting on an elevator, and she just decided to take the steps, and her, 4-inch pumps runs all the way up, but 2 flights of steps, because she had no patience to wait for the elevator. And I think that's how she's always, that's how she led. And that's why she's the most prolific legislator of our time, because
absolutely,
she didn't want to waste any time. She felt like, listen, it's an honor every day that we get to, that we get to represent our nation. And we should take advantage of every moment to better that nation. And so that was always her mission. And so, she was hardworking. So we had to be extra hardworking. That's why I said, if she called me now, I'd be overwhelmed with anxiety thinking about what I don't know. But she was always
exactly,
steps ahead of everybody, her staff, the
absolutely.
body as an institution, the party as an institution. Obama is getting a lot of credit for this redistricting effort, but I remember when she brought Holder and Obama together almost 10 years ago, because she knew this was coming around the corner. Or when we did the women's economic agenda in 2014, because she knew the following year there was going to be a year of the women, and we just
Right.
had it 2 cycles ago. So she's always 5 steps ahead of everyone. And I think it's that boundless energy that enables it.
Absolutely. Now you came back to her a second time. When was that, and what was your specific ask of her when you did return?
Yeah, I was in the Obama White House, and I remember meeting with Valerie Jarrett after Trump had won, and she's like, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I just feel a pull to stay." And she's like, "Well, maybe you should go out west, make money for a family. You got a young family." And I said, "Well, there's something pulling me in." All of a sudden, I started getting calls from Pelosi's team, other members of Congress, and at the time she was quoting every founding father, the times have found us, the times have found us. And they got a hold of me, and they were like, now is the time. Everything we've instilled in you, now is the time to use it in the interest of the country. Everything is on the line. And so I was, engaging with her and her team, and I said, listen, I'll take the job under two conditions. One, you give me the top job so that I could be the first woman and first one of color to run communications for a speaker. And second was that I wanted to be in charge of running the opposition to Donald Trump. And she's like, "You got it. It's yours. So, let's do it." And that was sort of my second journey with her. And I mean, people always, those who know her well are shocked that I came back. But it's, for me, it was iron sharpens iron. If I wanted to be the best, I had to work for the best. If I wanted to be, the baddest communicator, in the business, then I had to put myself in the center of the action. And that's where it was, and, it worked out. We won the speakership back. We won 40 seats. It was historic. The whole time it's historic. I led the impeachment war room of Donald Trump. We did 23 investigations into the administration that was incredibly successful. So 6 cabinet secretaries stepped down in scandal. So it was a really incredible time for me, a really big growth opportunity. But I will say this, I'm going to write a letter to the speaker, and in it, I'm just going to thank her really for the opportunity to really trust me with that level of responsibility. I mean, I don't know any other initiative bigger than impeaching a president. I mean, what bigger thing
Absolutely.
could, especially at that time, especially that this particular president. And so So anyway, so I owe her a lot for trusting me with such a great, big responsibility.
Absolutely. She was extremely strategic on impeachment. There were people who were pushing her much earlier to go forward, and she held off until the time was right. She also then delayed in sending the impeachment articles over to the
So
Senate.
strategic. That was so strategic.
Tell us a little bit about how she saw impeachment. She can count votes better than any individual. So she understood that this was, in all likelihood, he was not going to get removed from office, but she understood the gravity of the moment, the reason why we are doing this. Talk to us a little bit about how she viewed that first impeachment and her decision on timing and when to pull the trigger.
No, you're absolutely right. There were a lot of people that were pushing her to move sooner and faster and providing every explanation within the Constitution and beyond on why she should have. And Norm can go into this in greater detail. He was
Yes,
one of those people,
he has
right?
the stars. Yes,
He was one of those people. But, you know, her position has always been, and even when people were calling for the impeachment of Bush around the Iraq War, is that there's nothing more devastating to the nation than to impeach a president. And if we're
right.
going to go down that path, we have to ensure that it is grounded in principle, that it is
Absolutely.
grounded in strengthening our Constitution, because it can be so devastating to the nation. And so from her perspective, she's like, we're not going to do this frivolously. We have to do this in a way that stands the test of time, and that is clear violations of his oath of office in the Constitution. And so we held off until we uncovered the call with the Ukrainian president. And I remember those moments, immediately after. And there was a lot of whispering going on. You can work for Pelosi, but you don't know until you know, right? And she'll let you know when you need to know. And so there was a lot of whispering going on. And so I knew something was happening. And then it was revealed that this call had happened. And I remember her saying, okay, now is the time. We're going to move
Yeah.
forward because the president has left me no other choice. And that was the key phrase. He's left me no other choice. He's
Wow.
now demonstrated his lack of respect for the office, the oath that he takes in the Constitution. So we had no other choice. And so we moved forward. But there were a couple things as running communications for the operation she wanted me to be sure of. To your point about how she thinks in 5 dimensions. It's always 5-dimensional chess with Pelosi. She understands all the stakeholders and all the roles that they play. The first audience for her internally was those national security, our sort of crew of national security members of Congress. So the
Absolutely.
Gail Spanberger, Mickey Sherrill,
The five badasses, they called
yes,
themselves.
exactly. Alyssa Slotkin, right? Like those members. And so her point to me was, these are the members that you need to stay closest to when you think about developing the messaging and the strategy. And then second to that was our vulnerable members. But first, she understood that they were the most important audience because they could move the rest of the caucus. And then they
Absolutely.
eventually moved the rest of the nation. When they came out and they wrote that op-ed saying,
Yes, they did.
we have to move forward, it sort of, there was no other sort of the floodgates opened, I should say.
Right.
So that's just how strategic, to your point, how strategic the speaker was even around impeachment. But we had created, and Norm knows this very well, an entire inside outside game,
Oh, I know.
around impeachment, where we had constitutional scholars, civil rights groups on the ground we were meeting with on a weekly basis, and they were part of the overall strategy. We were telling them, you go left, we're going to go right. And so the whole thing was coordinated inside outside strategy. It was really the first time that that's ever been done in Congress before. And
Absolutely.
how we made history. It was the first time ever that a Republicans voted for impeachment against his own president. 60%
Absolutely.
of the country walked away believing that he had violated his oath of office. So it was an incredibly successful endeavor, but primarily because of how strategic Pelosi is, and because
Now,
she waited for the right moment.
absolutely. Now, there are many iconic moments with Donald Trump that we remember. We remember the coat and the glasses. We remember
Yes,
her standing up in the cabinet room lecturing him. We
yes,
remember her ripping up the State of the Union speech. She will say she never forethought any of those, that they were spontaneous. I'm not sure I believe that or not, but
It's
uh,
true.
there you go. There was something, and there's lots of things, obviously, about Donald Trump, but there was something that she absolutely, that he crossed a line. He was the sort of president she could not abide by. She had her differences with President Bush. She used to call him the worst president, in history. That was before Donald Trump. But there was something about Donald Trump. Was it his lack of patriotism, his lack of respect? What
Mhm.
was it that finally, that you could just see she was not going to tolerate this man?
Yeah, I think it was definitely his lack of respect for the office. Because at her core, Nancy is an institutionalist.
She
She
absolutely
believes in
is.
those documents and everything they represent. She believes in protocol. She believes in order. I mean, all of those things. She believes in the body of Congress itself. I mean, all of that stuff. She doesn't just believe in it. I mean, I think she's just fascinated by it on some level
Yes,
and is in awe of it. I mean, that's, she has so much reverence for these institutions. And so when it came to Donald Trump, he didn't. I mean, he's on the very opposite end of the spectrum as she was. And so we knew early on, she knew early on, this is going to be a problem for us. And I remember day one when I came back from the White House and she said, we're going to have a meeting. First day, my first day back, first meeting. I want you to come to the meeting with the talking points or how we're going to define Donald Trump. And one of,
absolutely.
and all of it centered around the fact that he only cared about himself. It wasn't the
Exactly.
Constitution. It wasn't the Congress. It wasn't Congress. It wasn't the people. It wasn't the body itself. It wasn't the oath he took. That everything centered around Donald Trump. And I think that's what she found most offensive because, to your point, even if she disagreed with him, they still were able to pass bills. Even though she
Yes,
she thought W was the worst president ever, they still passed the biggest climate bill in our nation's history. Like she still was able to work with him, but that's where I think she felt like he went too far. But we always anticipated that he would. I mean, we were planning 2 years out that there would be a January 6th, an attack
absolutely.
somehow. She was again always looking around the corner, always understood the power that he had with the nuclear codes, the arsenal that, and that he had that combined with the ego meant, we needed to be prepared for anything. And so,
Absolutely.
anyway, so I think it's the lack of respect and reverence he has for the country and its founding principles and documents.
There is an insight that we saw into Nancy Pelosi thanks to the coincidence that her daughter was there filming her on January 6th. She was utterly calm. People could have literally been losing their hair, hair on fire. This was arguably the biggest crisis that Congress had ever been through. And yet she was perfectly calm,
Mhm.
very aware of her responsibility to protect her members and her staff.
Mhm.
What struck you about how she reacted in the moment and then how she dealt with her staff in the aftermath, who had really been personally, physically, mentally traumatized by this
Yeah.
event?
And their lives were they were under threat. I mean, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the film, I was not surprised because that's the Nancy Pelosi I know.
Yeah.
Is all, I mean, although that was, unprecedented set of circumstances, she always has her head on. She's always cool. And it's partly because she's always anticipating.
Yeah.
She's always anticipating. And so, as I said, when we were anticipating almost 2 years earlier that something would happen, not knowing exactly what that was. So, and then what struck me more than anything else is how everyone else reacted around her.
Yes.
It's even Republicans, who
Absolutely.
found themselves in her bosom, for a lack of a better way of describing it,
Yes.
looking to her for the answer and for guidance. But I think that speaks volumes about how people saw Nancy in that role, in her, no matter if she was the leader or the speaker, they always saw her like that. Now, they wouldn't say that nationally, publicly.
Yeah.
They wouldn't say, Republicans wouldn't say that publicly, but that's always how they felt about her, that she was always, again, in control, in the power position, fully aware of her surroundings and her responsibility and all, but more than anything else, taking control in charge in any set of crises. So I wasn't surprised when I saw that. But what did surprise me, I will tell you this, and I've not said this much, but because I worked with her twice, I saw her evolution. I saw her
Yes.
become a different type of a leader
Mm.
under Donald Trump than she was in any other point when I've engaged with her or worked for her. It was almost as though, like, the this is superhero meeting the most perfect villain at the most perfect time, in their life or their career. And she really hit a whole other set of gears that I had never seen before. I think
Yes.
she
A
just had a whole nother,
steeliness, a
yeah, a whole
determination.
nother sense of
Oh,
purpose and clarity about what that was. And so that's what I saw in those moments, in those clips. But that's what I saw for 4 years working for her.
well, you, I am sure, have had a lifetime of memories from her, and
Yes,
she's not gone yet. She has another year to go. And of course, she leaves on a high note, having ushered in Prop 50, which is one more jujitsu move on Donald Trump. So, in true Nancy Pelosi style, we will have you back many times to continue to
thank you.
share
I
your
appreciate
stories
it.
because you have so many. And I want to thank you for your service, and particularly during their impeachment. That's when we got to know each other best, and you
Can
were
I just say
just
one more
so
story that I loved?
absolutely.
Just to punctuate the point about her being a badass. I remember when we were in the
Yes.
thick of it all, in the throes. She's on the phone with Donald Trump, and she might hate me for saying this story, but I remember her saying, "Listen, we've got two options. We can either work together and do what's in the best interest of the country, or you can choose your weapon. But I'm ready either way." And so it's like, hearing that was like, oh my God, this woman is like incredible. She's on the phone with
Yes.
the president of the United States saying, choose your weapon. I'm ready. I'm prepared either way you want to do this. And so anyway, that to me, that story always punctuates like how much of a badass, how fearless and steely she is, and how convicted she is about her principles and the principles of this country. So
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you, Ashley, for having served her so well, for having served the country during
thank you.
impeachment. And we will look forward to having you back to share more of your life with Nancy. She is, for many of us, just an iconic figure, a heroic
Absolutely.
figure, a role model in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
So thanks so much. It was great
Thanks
talking
for
to you.
having me. My favorite subject.